Thank
Good evening, everyone. The way the session will work is I'll introduce our speakers for the evening. We'll engage in a moderated Q&A, and then we'll open it up to the audience. We have with us Iram Sultan, who's a designer who specializes in creating both modern and traditional designs with a unique twist. Her work focuses on designing spaces that are beautiful, comfortable, and most importantly, functional. Design to her is all about storytelling, curated with love and told with passion. Art plays an important role in her spaces, and she is known to effectively amalgamate the best of artworks in all her projects. Her design rule of 3 C's is based on create, curate, and collect. She has dedicated herself in making spaces that are comfortable, beautifully curated, thoroughly thought upon, and then presented in front of the clients. Her work is like a writer who starts a story with intricate details and has numerous special characters that make the story worth listening to. Welcome, Iram, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Satyajit.
Our second panel member of the evening, Jaiveer Johal. Sorry, I'm having a slightly nasty cold, so if I just stumble in the middle, sorry about that. Jaiveer Johal has been a keen collector of modern and contemporary Indian art, including textile art for the past decade, and has a keen interest in decorative arts of South India and the Deccan in particular. Within this field, the keystone of his collecting has been the Vijayanagar Empire, as they speak not only to his personal taste, but also to the confluence of the cultures of the north and south of the country, which is also a personal confluence of his spending the first half of his life in Delhi and the second in his chosen home of Chennai. In the pursuit of his passion, he has not only collected examples of ancient art spanning from Gandhara to the Nayaka, but also worked with ateliers and craftsmen for the revival and upgradation of traditional skills in the field of woodwork and textile design to make them more relevant to the modern Indian home and the international market. He serves as a patron of the Delhi Contemporary Art Week, the Madras Art Weekend, the Chennai Photo Biennale, and other art organizations. In his professional life, he runs the Johal Logistics Group, a 200 crore plus company with interests in automotive logistics and contract manufacturing, apart from serving on the boards of startups in the clean energy sector. In addition, as a matter of personal improvement, he's pursuing a program in Indian aesthetics from Jnana Prabha, Mumbai. Welcome, Jaiveer. Welcome, Iram, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Jaiveer, my first question is actually to you. Can you give us an example, or can you give us an overview of your antiques collection? And how do you document it? How do you maintain the provenance of it? And are there any specific practices that you follow to verify authenticity and history of your pieces?
So those are it's a very vast question that you're asking. So let's break that down into bits, right? So in terms of if what I collect is based on my own sense of personal aesthetic, as your introduction so kindly listed out. So I live in Madras. I collect around the Deccan. That is an area that I understand, and there's also an area that I live around, so I can see exemplars of that in temples, in homes, in public institutions. So that kind of gives you a summary in terms of why I collect what I collect, right? Now, if you're talking about the practicalities of how to collect on that question, antiquities are, whether we like it or not, a little bit more fraught in terms of collecting than, say, modern and contemporary art, simply because the provenance trails as well as authenticity, there isn't really an institution or a person that you can go to which can, to any degree of certainty, talk about 4,500 years of human history, right? So it's difficult, but not impossible. The first thing, of course, is that you do is you read and you visit museums and you look. I think it's about developing an eye, and at the risk of sounding arrogant, I trust my eye over any provenance paper, right? And particularly in areas which I feel that I have some level of passion and knowledge for, right? So it's about developing your own eye, right? And the only way to develop your eye is to look at things, and you have to look at good things and bad things and patent fakes and really good examples, and then you will kind of start seeing the similarities in a good hand versus an average hand, in what is modern and what is not. Also, in terms of studying the iconography, that is a different matter altogether. I'm not an expert in that subject by far, but that also helps. And honestly, what helps me the most is friends who collect, right? So we all kind of act as sounding board slash authenticators for each other. I have two friends who are experts on miniatures, whose knowledge I kind of rely upon all the time. I only pay them in dinners, and not only that, leave that. So, and alternatively, the same friend comes back to me, and when he has questions on something which is modern and contemporary, or of the decade. So I think it's in that way you kind of develop an eye. That's one. The other is, of course, dealers. I think, dealers get a very bad rep in general, but some of the most knowledgeable people that I meet are dealers. And when you sit with a dealer who's offering you a work, I would say ask questions. Why? Why is this important? Why is this way? Why is this little finger facing this side? Why is it different from what I saw at the Met? Why is it different from this book that you're showing me, which has a similar example in Melbourne, right? So the dealers, good dealers, are fonts of knowledge, right? And that is the one major way in which you learn. It's also a relationship of trust. Over a period of time, you buy from a dealer, you end up selling something back to the dealer. So in that sense, that is very important in terms of establishing a provenance where you're buying from. Then, of course, the general tendency is to buy from auctions. India, in antiquities, we'd have very few and far between. There was one at Saffron Art yesterday, which happened after, I think, a gap of 2 years, because the ESI and the transfer of documentation and all of those things is a very hard bit to get done for anybody who's in the business of actually selling the antiques. So that having been said, that is how you document it. That is what you do. I always, personally, what I do is that if I'm buying a work from a dealer, I will either get them to write out a catalog note for me, or I'll write out my own catalog note, right? Which helps, because eventually, if you bought something 10 years ago and you've had a conversation with the dealer, if you're anything like me, half of it would have disappeared from your head. So then you need to kind of go back to that catalog note and have a look and say, okay, what was the discussion? What was the period? What was the other thing? So you use your own cataloging methodology. And the way I look at it is that you go to get into a wiki spiral. So it's like when you buy a work, you get into a spiral of like understanding what the work is, and then the context of the work, and then other works, and then you kind of read around it. And if you're not passionate about that particular work, unless you're building a museum or an institution and you're filling gaps, don't buy it.
All right, that makes a lot of sense in terms of not to
Sorry,
buy
it was a
it.
long answer because it was a long question.
No.
Feel free to
That was
cut me short anytime.
not
Please
at all.
don't. Please don't. I need him to speak a lot more.
He's always a pleasure to listen to. Thank you so much, Jaiveer. Iram, we see a lot of art in your projects. It holds a lot of significance to you as well. How did it become an important part of your design language, and what role do you see it playing in terms of adding value to the overall design language?
I think I'm going to sort of add to what Jaiveer is saying, and I think you will have both of us talk about things in common, because for anyone for whom art matters, it plays a role. I think Jaiveer was talking specifically about antiquities and what he collects, but I think history plays a big role the minute you talk about art. I think Jaiveer will agree with me on that. Not just about antiquities, but even contemporaries or masters or moderns. History plays a big role. I think history of your own life plays a role for me, definitely. I'm very old, so we didn't have Wikipedia. We had Encyclopedia Britannica. And I was 9 when I was reading about Caravaggio and chiaroscuro, and I was fascinated. I don't know why, or I don't know how. I was also very fortunate that my family was deeply interested in culture. So I grew up with, parents who went to concerts and to art galleries and to theater, and their friends came over. So I think exposure definitely helps. I think it's where you grow up and what you are interested in. that kind of builds your passion and your interest, and it grows. Like Jaiveer is saying, you read. There is no shortcut. There's no quick, easy fix. You don't just one day say, "Oh, I love art. I'm going to do this." It has to mean something to you. It has to be part of you, which is why if you see how it gets placed in work, it's not just work, it's life. It's part of my life. It's part of what I do. Collecting is something that will vary, for example, between Jaiveer and I. There'll be something that will speak to me, something that will speak to him. But I think for me, when I'm placing work in a client's home or any other space, how they feel about it is very important. I always talk about context, and I think the first context in all my work are my clients. They are the first stepping stone of building that context, of creating that relationship. And how they respond to something I show them is what really brings that particular work to them. The significance actually comes from the client again. Art is so personal, it's part of who they are. I'm going to leave that space, I'm going to come back to this, where I live and where things that matter to me are seen. But they're going to live there every day. They need to walk in, engage with that work, or have the desire to engage with it, or see what it does to them. I'm looking at Jaiveer's home behind him, and we were just chatting a bit offline and saying, what's the work behind you? Or because it's not just going to tell me about the work, it's going to tell me about Jaiveer. And that's how art holds a great significance in my work. It adds a soul to a home because it brings the character of my client, their personal preferences, their likes and dislikes, their sense of history, their sense of belonging into a space. And that's, I think, the biggest value that I see art adding to my projects. It's not, I don't want to talk about the commercial value. I mean, that's something that everyone talks about today, art about being an investment. But I think when you work with people who have the ability to collect or to acquire art, I think it needs to begin with a lot more than a commercial value.
I'd like to sort of, prod a bit more, Iram, and then I'd want to move on to Jaiveer.
Jaiveer gives longer answers, huh? So I have to speak less.
If I can take a second and show you a work, if
Yes,
that's
please do.
Since you were speaking about it, and I can't quite tell if you will be able to have a look, but can you see the Vivek Vilasani, or you can't?
Yes, I can. I can see the Vivek. Yes.
Yeah. So that is a work after Caravaggio.
Right.
Yes. So that was his
but
series.
I know my I mean, I think
since you mentioned it and it was like I was looking right straight at it.
But it's amazing, right? Now, Satyaji, this is what I'm talking about. Art also does this. These are conversations that become meaningful. And somebody can say, why does Caravaggio matter? I mean, Caravaggio matters for a million reasons that we can spend the rest of the night debating or discussing. And it will never end. But these are the things that art brings together for us. So sorry, go ahead. Jaiveer and I just took over this conversation.
Back to you. Back to you.
No, so Iram, I just have a follow-up question, and Jaiveer, I'll come to you after that. How do you work with collectors, or how do you work with collectors who are sort of who've never bought a work before, and the reason I ask that is one often sees a lot of similar patterns in terms of works when one opens an AD or a any magazine. There are very similar patterns, or there are very similar names that keep frequenting. Yours projects are one of the few where, like, I was very surprised. There were some very young artists from West Bengal, from Orissa, that I've seen. And working as a curator, they would have either DM'd me, or I would have had like a brief conversation with them, and then next thing I know, 6-8 months later, I see them as a on the wall of one of your projects. So how does that play out?
It's a very easy answer. Like Jaiveer said, we're forever in galleries. We're talking to curators. We're talking to gallerists. the treasure house of information, and Instagram has been a huge connector. There'll be people who will email or who will send in work. I'm so fortunate that I get to see really exciting young art, sent directly. There is a gallery, for example, in Delhi called Art Incept that specializes in showing young artists, Gayatri. Or there is Tark in Bombay, which has a fantastic program, again, of young artists. There
If
is,
I can come and go see Amino
Yes.
Acids. Fabulous, fabulous show at Tark right now.
I'm dying to. I want to learn how to teleport. If I could teleport and not really like lose time flying here and there, I would be the happiest. But I know what you mean, right? But I love Tark's program, and I've loved Tark's program for a while. Again, I work with them. There's Shrine.
Fantastic.
There are all these galleries, but apart from all these galleries, you also, and that's all India, right? We live in a minuscule world now. And I think that is the beauty of how we live today. We all travel, everyone who we're acquiring for also travels. So I think there is a lot of connection that art brings together. There are young international artists who don't really show in India as yet, but who will. The Dubai Art Fair is a great place to go. It's not far. One of my favorites is PAD for both design. Well, that's primarily design. But there is a lot that you can see and look at. Again, it's how much time and how much interest you have. I'm deeply interested. It's something I'm forever looking at. And, who knows what treasures you can get, primarily even for myself.
Always for oneself first.
Always for oneself, right?
So
Behind
Satish,
me-
if I may come in and
Sorry,
Please do,
can I
please do.
finish?
usurp
Sorry,
your
I wanna
role, but
go.
I have some questions.
Jaiveer, sorry, 1 second. Now see the work behind me, that little Sachin George Sebastian.
Fabulous. I was going to ask
Yeah.
you.
That was bought over 15 years ago. So you catch him young, huh? That's the trick. You catch him young.
young. So, but Satish, at risk of overtaking your job, I have a couple of questions for Iram.
Oh,
May I?
gosh. Yeah.
Please do. Please do. It's always a pleasure.
Honestly, this is something which I ask designers who have a particular penchant for art and their projects.
Yes.
Do you choose your clients accordingly, or is it? I mean, like, how does it work with somebody? Because a house is a finite project even for you, right? Like, you have to get it done in a year or 2 years, and you want to move out, or 6 months or 9 months or 2 years, right? Like, you don't want to be. It's not a curation of a lifetime. So how do you kind of, within the space constraint, build a collection that quickly? I mean, even if the checkbook's available.
No, it's hugely variable. So sometimes you have clients, I've had clients who've never bought an artwork ever before. And then we work together. And I think it's about conveying this, right? I mean, if you can convey this passion and awaken their interest, then you end up building a collection for them in that time period. But what I want to start with is answering the first part of your question. The project is finite, but that relationship is not.
Correct. I agree.
I have the most wonderful, amazing clients who are now friends, for whom and with whom we're still talking about work and building their collection and adding to it, because a home is always getting added to, right? I mean, I'm sure that what I see behind you and around you is not in a day's work.
No, absolutely. And
Yeah,
see,
and then you want to switch it around. So like now I'm talking to
Which
a
is why I
client
have gallery
in Hyderabad
hanging.
and saying, oh, let's rehang your work, because that's so exciting, right? It's part of completely flipping things over and rehanging everything. So you do that.
But I tell friends one thing when they
Yeah.
buy. I said, don't be afraid of blank spaces in your house.
Yeah.
Let it be blank for some time. It's not necessary that everything needs to be filled up. If you're not finding the right work at that point of time, something that speaks to you, let it be an empty wall.
Also, no, Jaiveer, we start a little early. Like I start on day one. You hire me, I start. Because it's not like you can go out there and you go to a store and you're saying, bhaiya, do sari blue, do sari red. It's not like that, right? Yeah.
And
And it
particularly
has
with the market in the last 3 years, nothing's
it has-
simple.
Yeah, see, and it has to talk to you, it has to talk to the client. The client may need a little time to get to a space where you think, they need to be at, or they can get to. It's also going to vary from each person to another, right? One client can be there really quick. One client may take a lot of time to get there, right? Because they need to understand. And you can't hurry this. It's not like, we have this is the timeline, take a decision and get this. It doesn't work like that. So it
Except
is.
it works now for the galleries like that. Now, if you say put a work on hold, they say 5 minutes ke andar batao. I have 2 other people on the line.
But God bless, yeah. I was reading Arvind Vijay Mohan's Satyajit, we will keep talking. Huh? So you need to interrupt both
Yeah,
Jaiveer.
sorry.
Yeah, because
This is a lot of fun. So
this
this
is
is a lot
going
of
to
fun. So I don't want to
segue
interrupt.
into anything. And he has a glass of wine in his hand. And I'm very jealous that I don't. And
So when he asked me my next question, you feel free to go get yourself a drink.
Harsh is going to kill me at some point. And
Not
you,
at all. Not at all. I wish I could get one myself.
who's stopping you? You're off camera. So I'll just stick. Yeah.
Great.
Sorry, Satyajit. We'll just keep doing this. So please go ahead.
Yeah, please come take back control.
No,
Yeah.
Iram, you were mentioning something. I'm very, very keen to listen to that actually.
I was just saying that it's going to vary so intensely. There has also been a client with whom I have walked into the art fair. Fortunately, very blessed to have access to catalogs before. Put works on hold, walked into the fair with him and said, this. And he said, yes, Jaiveer, that's the checkbook. Very grateful for it. Treasure it, value it, want it. No complaints at all. We've done that too. But that's also, I think, a part of the faith building process, in all fairness. Your client needs to know that you know what you're doing. And that's not just about the art. In my field, it's a complex web because we look at so many aspects of a particular space. We look at it in multiple ways. So once you have your client in that space and they're comfortable, and like I'm saying, I'll start talking about the art from day one. I may be buying on day 2 or day 30. It doesn't matter. But conversations begin from day 1. It matters. And if you tell your client it matters and this is going to matter, or this is the context, or, it could enrich your life, or it could bring so much value to your table in what it does. I think a lot of clients that we are fortunate to work with are mentors like Jaiveer is. So you're mentoring, a younger artist, or you are looking at the art world. It's like the Medicis. I mean, there should be the Medicis in the current world. I think we need a little bit of the Renaissance back. We should have patrons. You would not have the Renaissance without the Medicis. Let's just put it out there.
Couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
True.
So now Jaiveer's turn.
So, Jaiveer, my question to you is again, like going back to the whole collection that you work on, which is antiquities and textile as well, textile and craft objects and stuff like that. Can you give us an idea of the challenges of maintaining a condition of the work? Because I'm assuming textiles come with its own set of challenges, and of course some types of antiques as well. So if you could.
No,
Get
see, it's and I live by the sea. So for those of you who don't know, I live in Madras and I overlook the sea. It's very close. So there are challenges. See, most antiquities, if it comes to bronze and stone, have taken care of themselves for thousands of years. And as long as you don't bother them too much, they'll take care of themselves for a while, right?
Correct.
It's the basics need to be done, right? It's not like Indians it's not like non-collectors of textile art don't have textiles, right? If you grow up in an Indian household, right, in a fluent Indian household, you have shawls. If you're in the north, you have saris. So you will see your grandmothers and your mothers, they will take them out and they will sun them, they will put phenol in it and they will put it back. So textiles are something which are part of our culture, and handling textiles is something which we've seen since we were kids, right? So this is
Yeah.
not rocket science. It
Yeah.
doesn't require, beyond say maybe Jamdani, it requires a certain greater degree of care in terms of handling, etc. But other than that, mostly, these things that get passed down from generation to generation, and we've seen these things happen in front of our eyes. And if you follow that process, you're pretty good. That having been said, particularly for textiles that are wearable, wear them. I think this is a dispute that I have with friends who work in the textile field, who are curators and study them, and I'll show them something and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to wear this tonight. They're like, oh. Like, no, it's an item which is made to have a life, right? And if certain things fray over a period of time, I think for me it adds to the charm of it. Right. So if it's a textile which is a fulkari, or a textile which is a shawl, and it's a textile which is made to be worn at some point of time, let's just bloody well wear it. Right. So that having been said, most antiquities require probably less maintenance and care than say a canvas or a paperwork. I think the most difficult things to handle in the world are paperworks in terms of the kind of maintenance of them. So don't let that scare anybody off. As I say, if it survived 1,000 years in the wild, it will survive your lifetime.
I completely agree. Actually, I completely agree because I feel the same way about textiles. He collects textiles across a wide range, and I'm deeply invested. I love carpets. Khotans are some of my favorite types of carpets.
I'm sitting on one.
Oh, I'm sitting on one too. Harsh, did you know all this before you put us together on a panel? I have a feeling some sneaky thing was happening here.
I did my research.
So I think, and sorry, gentlemen, cheers.
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 I'm in a dry state right now, so I'm not really at the privilege of being able to.
Are you in Gujarat?
Yes. So
I hate to break it to you, doesn't count. No, Gujarat really, really, really well. But I agree with Jaiveer. I also feel that this touch me not attitude with art or textile or antiquities will not work.
I think we lost her.
I think she's probably said, yeah, but while it comes back online, I completely agree, right? Things are tactile, right? I mean, but yeah, sorry, you're back.
No, go ahead. Sorry,
I was saying particularly craft tradition and tradition of styles and of objects, and even say deity figures are tactile.
Ceramics.
They're made to be tactile. If you look at like even miniature bronze, you'll see that the face a lot of the times is worn out. It is worn out because of the abhishekam that has been done to the deity over a period of time. So these are made to be touched, made to be handled, right? And to kind of put them in your own home setting, to convert it into a museum, is the worst possible thing you can do to a house.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the fact that you've managed to get a beautiful piece of art, it's a living piece of art, right? It's still with you, and I think it's growing with you. I think you're growing with that piece. I just think that's the way it should be. I couldn't agree more. India has such a rich tradition. In any case, we talk specifically about India. There is things, I mean, I'm so glad you collect bronzes, you collect antiquities. Ceramics, for example, long neglected, nearly forgotten, but such a rich tradition that we should continue to look at. And I love some of the new contemporary artists who are working with that medium. I think there's some great work coming out. And I really want to see where that goes. I mean, Shireen's daughter has a small gallery, and she has a young artist who's working in ceramics, who I actually met many years ago when she was working with an integration company. Can you imagine? I think
that was the first show, I think, at Chemold Collab.
Yes. And what an interesting body of work. So
completely agree. And this is something which also goes back to the course I was taking, and and things that I look at. I think there's, it's very easy to kind of say, oh, Jaiveer in this particular instance is a collector of antiquities and Iram is a collector of modern and contemporary art. The kind of thread of South Asian aesthetics is quite unbroken, right? And today in the morning, we had a class and I was having a discussion with a friend who's actually online, where you could look at the terracotta work in Chanduketkar, kind of draw the line towards 18th century Bengal, and then right into KG Subramaniam's work.
Wow. Wow.
Like it is the thread is there, right? I mean, if one looks at it from that way. So it's this kind of, I know because you're asking me the antiquities question, the modern question, but a lot of these things are kind of interlinked, and the sense of aesthetics, and this is again a question again I'm taking Satyajit's role and asking you, do you push your clients to go beyond and go into the classical kind of art as well?
Yes, very much.
I'm very happy to hear that.
I'm a big lover of, so I don't necessarily like boundaries. So I think while I really enjoy what you're saying about there's a particular thread that binds, right? I think that thread exists across boundaries as well. And I think like this because of what I have read and what I do read. So, for example, Yeats, who's one of my favorite poets, was deeply influenced by Eastern philosophy, read all the Vedas, read the Upanishads. The Upanishads was one of the greatest influences on his writing. I think that sort of translates across mediums because artists are open not just to another visual art, but they read. Of course, there's history, there's anthropology, there's sociology, and there is that thread of the continued human consciousness that binds us all, right? And as the world is growing smaller, the influences are growing more varied. And I see that. So I have been really fortunate. I have bought Paul Evans' works. Paul Evans is a brutalist sculptor, also made design objects, which is another thing that I am very, very gung-ho about, which is collectible design. Not big in India yet, but here's hoping that we get there. I think we're moving in that direction. So we've bought the most amazing Paul Evans work, which we acquired from a gallery in New York. We also bought an Yves Klein work. So I think I love the fact that I have, for example, I'm from Lucknow, and Lucknow had this metalwork tradition called Ganga Jamni. And I have my great-grandmother's pandan sitting bang in the middle of my fairly clean modernist home, because I think this is actually the thread that binds us. I think if you look at history as something that's significant and important, it's your history. We own it. It's ours. This work is 15 years old. That piece is over 120 years old. But they're still mine. They have that commonality. They bind my life together. And that's what really art is all about, what it brings to your life and your collective consciousness. Like, just look at how much Jaiveer and I have in common. We've not talked about this. We've not discussed this ever. I don't think there are many things more beautiful than this.
Absolutely.
Satyajit, we will not take over. I promise we won't take over.
Oh no, I'm having a ball. I just don't feel like saying anything because this conversation is so interesting.
No, but please go ahead.
No, so again, like going back to Jaiveer actually, because I'm very keen to understand a lot more in terms of the scale of your collection, right? Because
sorry, I'm saying I know a little bit about the scale of his collection.
The reason I'm very curious to know of that is from whatever I've read, whatever I've heard of. There are quite a few interesting. Well, not few would be an understatement, but there are many interesting pieces, and there are some. Although you say that one doesn't really sort of quote unquote collect to fill gaps, so to say, but you have a very, very well thought out pattern from what I've heard and from what I've understood.
Ooh.
What I'm keen to know is how do you really maintain a certain understanding of where what is, and how do you sort of keep all of it in your head somewhere, or how does that
So
entire
I think
process
asking
work?
the practical question, I use art logic,
Okay.
which is the best thing to use.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like on a practical note, that is perhaps it's a little bit of a cumbersome thing because it keeps asking you a lot of things to fill up, and then you feel a little bad because you don't fill up all of it. But like fill up the basics and you're kind of sorted and done, and you can upload all your certifications on it and all of that. So I think that on a very practical level, if you have a collection of say more than 100 objects, then I would highly recommend that you move on to art logic. It's
But
not
can I ask you, can I add to his question? I'm
Yeah.
actually really keen. I know you live in Madras, you choose to live in Madras. And while I think, bronze is a fantastic medium down south, and especially when you're looking at antiquities, what really gravitated you towards the Deccan in terms of aesthetic? I'm only talking about, I'm a big believer in art and heart, so
So
I'm going to.
I'll tell you,
Yeah.
it's very interesting. So this might be a little bit of a long-winded answer, right?
Oh,
So,
I'm all for it.
so
Satyajit?
All for it, all for it. I actually have a follow-up to that once he has his response.
So I'm trying to be articulate about this because this is something which I've thought a lot about as to why this happens. There are a couple of reasons. One is, as I said, and he said in his introduction, I think I find the Deccan a lot more relatable than I think I find the deep south of Tamil Nadu, for example, because of the similarity in terms of language, because the Dakhani kind of Urdu is quite similar to even like Kannada, bits of it is similar, not Karnataka, similar to say the Hindustani, which I grew up speaking. Right, growing up in Delhi. So I think there is an immediate kind of heart pull to something that you understand, right? I also think that the Deccan was the best confluence of the North and South in terms of Persianate influences, as well as the more indigenous kind of art of the Hoysalas and the Cholas. I think kind of melting pot
Love
that
the Cholas.
right, what it created, I think is utterly fabulous, right? And also from a very practical point of view, it is affordable for me, right? I mean, it is also something like which I can buy, right? The Deccan in terms of Vijayanagara is still, I'm not saying it's cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not Chola, let's put it that way. And in general, it's not like I have a few or bits and bobs, but
you have a few Chola works, don't you?
This is, let's move.
Oh,
everything I have is registered, so I have actually nothing to be happy
no, but I actually really appreciate it, which is why I'm asking you.
So I think
why I'm asking you.
I'll tell you why. I think I find high Chola a little too refined for my own personal liking. I think I find the fact that the Vijayanagar Deccan is a little bit more humanist. I think even in the depictions of in terms of the form, the female form and the male form are a little bit more realistic. I think if you look at High Chola, they could get off the statue and walk down the ramp. I think that's also, I think, one of the reasons why I think Chola does so well. I mean, I was laughing about this, but I really think why Chola does so well universally is because it has a very universal kind of standard of beauty.
Can I ask you something? Sorry, because it's really interesting. Sorry, Satyajit. Go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Sorry, but I think it's really interesting because you do enjoy the confluence, like you said, and there's the Persianate influence, which is extremely refined to the nth degree. The scale is perfect. It has to go to the golden median. Yet you want to look at something which is a little more humanist. I really want to talk about this dichotomy because I find it fascinating. And then I'm going to
dichotomy. I think that's the influence of the Deccan.
No, but I'm also going to
both these elements.
Yeah, but I'm going to add a little bit. I mean, I think it's also, I know that, anybody who's a visual creature, right, like us, is looking at every kind of influence, whether it's subliminal or conscious. And I think the architecture down south, especially in Madras, is truly far more humanist. The wild explosion of colors that you see in some of the temple architecture is absolutely stunning, but it is not the perfection of the Persian. Sorry. So I just wanted to understand where the influence of perhaps architecture and design also comes into
It's
this.
also function of memory and
Yes.
that, as you were saying, like there's certain works which speak to me. So amongst, say, the modern, the contemporaries, I love Seher's work, right?
Oh, me too.
I love Seher. I mean,
Yeah.
and Seher's work or Bani's work again speaks back to, say, memory and a sense of home, right?
Yeah.
What is home, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think I have
Zarina,
I have Zarina hanging right there, which
I figured.
yeah. So from home is a foreign taste. So I mean, for me, because I kind of uprooted myself at the age of 17 and moved to Madras.
Right.
And this is home, but I'm not
Right.
a Tamil speaker by any stretch of the imagination. So it is also a sense of alienation in one's own home, right?
Right.
So for me, in that sense, I think also it's important when I collect the Deccan. I think it gives me a sense of familiarity. It gives me a sense of home,
Belonging.
right? Belonging.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the aesthetics on its own. It's a lot about
Emotion, heart.
emotion
Yeah.
and like my mother can't understand why I collect Zarina's work because she's way more comfortable in her skin than I am. So
Oh, I love Zarina. Also, little footnote, interesting footnote. She was my aunt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was married to my father's first cousin.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Awesome. So you might be having quite a few of her
I
work family collection.
I wish. I want to fill my walls with Zarina. But I will settle for Shilpa. If Shilpa will let me be related to her. Right now, Rajiv holds sway, but if Shilpa will let me be related, fill whatever's left with Shilpa.
I got I think perhaps one of the last neons that was going.
Guess who else did?
Who?
Me.
Which is why then I got a call from Roshni saying there's one left. If you want it, say yes now. Which
Yeah,
was at in Delhi.
Yes. So you bought Glance or History? What did you get? You bought History. I got Glance, and then I also placed History in a client's.
Ah. Though it's with her, I don't have a space for it. So I said, can you please keep it because that's not a work that I can store. Again, back to your question. Certain works are best left with the gallery until you find a place for it.
Yeah, like I bought works for a client from Jaiveer, this young artist who's based out of Australia. I love Jaiveer's program.
I absolutely love them.
I just love Jaiveer's program. Young artist based out of Australia, works. She's Dalit, and while living in Australia, is talking about her sense of rootedness, her sense of identity, her sense of being a Dalit, and I was like, okay. We need this work, but it's a work which has many perishable mediums.
I think Shrine also had her work at a show recently.
No, that's a different artist.
Send me the name.
I will send you the name.
Please, I'd love to be.
I will send you the work. And I've had it stored with Priya till the house is ready. The house is getting ready. I don't want it stored however well created it may be, whatever it may be. I don't want it stored with my client. So I know what you're saying. And by the way, the Glance, I have the same problem, Jaiveer. I don't have any wall left. No wall. My husband has asked me, which invisible wall am I putting up this work on?
I have a favorite anecdote for this, which you can use it. So there's a movie called The Field of Dreams. I don't know whether you
Yes.
see it.
Yes.
So in that there's a line, right? The line is repeated. It says, if you build it, they will come, right? So I've taken it, if you buy it, the space will come.
I've told my husband this, but he kept going at it. And he was, because he also knows there are other works that are gracing the confines of a cupboard or some other spaces. But I've just decided not telling him is the best way.
Yeah. That's the easiest thing.
He doesn't need to know anything. It's fine.
So
what he doesn't know can't hurt him.
So I get all my deliveries that get done to my mother because that's where there's like staff and everybody else. So usually if I'm traveling, I get a message, one more of your godforsaken tubes has landed up. She's
Okay,
like,
Satyajit,
she's
I
like,
promise at some we have to
there are
keep
enough
quiet.
UPVC pipes here for me to relay the plumbing.
We've moved to better pipes for plumbing. I just want to tell you that. Okay, sorry, Satyajit, please ask us whatever you
I
want.
have no questions, to be honest. I'm just having a ball of a time listening to the two of you.
Jaiveer, this is
Yes.
very bad behavior on our part.
I know. I'm sorry. I just texted for another glass of wine, so I'm absolutely terrible.
But tell me, so either of you actually, what was your most exciting? Because it's just there are so many things that that are coming out of this conversation. Of late, what has been your most recent acquisition that really sort of pushed you over? Like, for instance, I recently acquired a small I recently acquired a small work, and I was at a gallery, and it just completely moved me to the point where I started bawling in the gallery space. I was just like crying in the gallery space, standing in front of it. And it just I just
What
had
was it?
it's actually a small watercolor.
Mhm.
So very, very very, very similar to a lot of American realist portraiture and
Yeah.
American realist, like these life works where these day-to-day life scenes essentially. And an Ahmedabad based artist. I was very surprised to see
Who's
that.
the artist, if I may know?
There's this guy called Rajesh Naidu.
Okay.
So
And
Share
whose
later, just
gallery?
text both of us. Yeah.
Yeah, text both of us in whose gallery? Purva's gallery.
No. It wasn't. It was like a private space that was there.
Okay.
And so he's actually a faculty in one of the colleges over here, and he
Oh.
studied abroad, and like he came back and stuff like that.
So like a Harper kind of work. I'm obsessed with Harper, by the way. So since you mentioned American, so
yeah, no. So I'll share something.
yeah.
I'll-
Please share it. Sorry, I know this.
Yeah, but see, it was just I started bawling, like right in
Yeah.
front of it, and it just moved me completely. And has anything such happened off late, or maybe at some
Yes.
point of time? I'm very keen to know that.
Yes. Okay, Jaiveer, should I go first
Yes, please.
while you wait for your second glass of wine?
Yes, please.
So I recently saw Sakshi Gupta's show at Experimenter, and I think my jaw unhinged. I don't know if either of you have seen it. Harsh, have you seen it? I don't know if any of you have seen it. So the show was.
Unfortunately,
I'm sorry, I haven't. I was just a bit.
Oh, listen, you guys have to see her work. The show's just closed. I was fortunate enough to see it twice. I think my jaw was unhinged. I was left gobsmacked. I had so many emotions running through my body. I had just come from Jhaveri. I had walked from Jhaveri, where Amina's show was on, which was beautiful. And I was really fortunate that she was doing a walkthrough. She's an extremely articulate artist with these beautifully delicate, detailed works that draw you in. And she was talking about her work. And I was in this warm glow because I had taken a photograph of the Jhaveri space only because all I could see was a packed row, a sea of people, which is wonderful, right? Because that's what you really want. And I walked from Jhaveri to Experimenter in Colaba. And I walked into Sakshi Gupta's show. And as you enter in the hall, the first area, you see the back of this very large sculpture. And it's plain. It's just, you see the back covered with metal sheets. And when you go around, it takes you by surprise. It literally holds you in its grasp. It is going to make you feel a riot of emotions. It's going to make you think about so many different things that you never thought, and they're all going to be intimate. I think the intimacy of her work is incredible, incredible scale, yet so intimate. And then you walked into a second hall. There was a carpet, and these are all sculptural works. These are all metal works. Two large works hanging on a steel thread, which I was very happy I was able to acquire for a client. So I'm very blessed. I live vicariously also. So I get much more of the bang for the buck, because I'm not only collecting for myself, I'm collecting for others. And I love it. I just love the fact that I can work with so many different artists and different people, because each time you walk in someone else's shoes, right? Your client is the person whose shoes you walk in. And I'm walking in their shoes and trying to think of how they would feel or what they would feel. It enriches you. And so art is on anyway such an enriching experience. And then you're doing this. So Sakshi Gupta was one. And the recent, what was it before? Oh yeah, Biraj Dodia. The first time I saw her work ever was at the AD Design Show. I still remember. The booth had opened. I walked in. I looked at her work. There was a row of all her. She was only doing small works at that time. 1 by 1 foot canvases. And I walked in and I looked at it. I had no idea who it was, man, woman, child, alien, who had made these works. I looked at Priyanka and I said, I want that one. And she said, too bad, it's mine. I was like, what sort of gallerist are you? Too bad, it's mine. She said, no, I love that one. You take the other one. I said, no, that's the one I want. I can't tell you, we squabbled over that work for 45 minutes. And Prateek was telling Priyanka, I can't believe you are not giving her the work. This is your friend. This is somebody who you really like. So Biraj's work, I looked at it and it was instant, wild, mad love. That remains to date. What do you think of it, guys? Jaiveer?
I like her work. As a matter of fact, I saw one at one of your clients' offices, I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
Kunal.
Yeah. So I'd really like it sent me some picture, whatever. And I said, whatever, I'd like you move aside. I want to see that. That happens all the time. They'll send me a picture of themselves or of something.
Yeah.
No, I think
I love, and the bigger canvases, my God, I'll send you.
No, I wanted one, and I'd gone and spoken to, actually, Roshni had taken her to, and there was one which I loved, and she said, oh, the person hasn't confirmed. And I said, if they haven't confirmed, can I please have it? She said, you know what, I must be fair to them. I'll send them a reminder. If they don't confirm by tomorrow, I'll let you have it. And unfortunately, they confirmed. I said, why do you have to send a reminder?
Yeah. What is this? But I will send you a picture of another project where I placed one of her large canvases. I will send you a picture.
Please do. Please.
Yeah.
Please.
And I have a large Biraj behind me.
Oh, fabulous. I actually really like her sculptural canvas. That's what I really am quite fond of that genre of her work. Yeah. Even the one that I liked had a pole and a canvas, like the
I love those. Yeah, I love those. What about you, Satyajit?
Biraj's work?
No, any work that made
any other work? I mean, so another work was Mahesh Baligat.
Yes.
At his 2019 or 2020 solo at Project 88. I still remember the title of the work, Mother, I'm Fine, Everything Will Be Okay Soon. Oh God, I've gone to the exhibition every single day. I've stood in front of that work and I have bawled every single day in front of that work. It has just completely took me over. It just completely took me over.
Yeah, there are works like that. Matthew Krishano's work recently. Yeah.
Jaiveer, what about you?
I'll tell you the one work I didn't end up crying, but I was just flabbergasted because it was just so visually stunning. as well as so deeply meaningful was William Kenridge's work, which was the
Oh.
visualization of
Yeah.
the symphony, which was written on Stalin's death. And, I was with my friend Veronica Saraf, who's a fantastic
I
artist.
love her work. My
Yeah.
God, I love her work.
So-
Now textile, we can talk. Yeah.
So Veronica and I sat down and we went to see it together, and then
Yeah.
we looked at each other and he said, "You want to watch it again?" And we watched it 3 times because we just couldn't, like, every time you watch that work or you watch an excerpt of it, you just are flabbergasted with the sheer skill, what he's trying to convey, the layers of meaning.
Yes.
It's just, I mean, if anybody has an opportunity to see that particular work, please go, don't miss it. Even if you have to travel to a different city in the same country to do it, I would highly recommend doing it. It's just, the words and I'm not usually at a loss for words, as you know, but I'm at a complete loss for words on the kind of breadth of human emotion that you experience in that 10-15 minutes that you're there.
I was very fortunate. Last year I was in London and VNA had.
So yes, it was
Yes.
absolutely
Oh
fabulous.
my God. Oh my God. Yeah. But then there's so much to talk about in that sense. I mean, you can't miss an Anish, you can't miss.
Yeah. No,
There's-
so,
Yeah.
and the other work which I was fortunate enough to acquire again speaks to me in terms of memory, sense, place, is a work which I don't know why I ended up getting it, because I thought that it should go into a museum. Hopefully, like at some point it does. It's Zarina's River of Tears.
Oh.
Right? It's a sculptural work that she made
Yeah.
for which hopefully should be home in a few weeks' time. And I don't know where to install it again because it's a long work.
You'll find a place.
Yeah. But the moment I saw that work, I was just, and I'm like, it's her work. It talks about the pain of partition, but she speaks about it in a very beautiful, pristine 4 pearls, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
chain of pearls, which, if you put it down, is absolutely beautiful. But it is also a river of tears, which is what partition was. And this Semat exhibition happened around the time of deep communal violence in India, post Babri, all of that. So it speaks back into that. And as I said, it's just a work which you look at it and then you keep looking at it and you well up, and then you question yourself as to why you're welling up, because it is inherently really beautiful, but it causes those emotions and those surge of emotions. And I've been very lucky, must have done some things right in this life for the past one to be able to have acquired it. And again, I'm really shocked that it wasn't picked up by a museum, because I honestly believe at some point it should be in a public space for more people to have access to it.
I hope you'll send me a picture once you.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you how to install it.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
Yay, thank you.
I'm paying in installments.
I invite myself over to come and help you install.
And I'm paying in installments.
My last question to the two of you, like, for instance, that Mahesh work that I just spoke of, it moved me. And unfortunately, at that particular point of time, I didn't have the resources to sort of acquire it. And then it was acquired by some industrial family, and I don't think I'll ever be able to go and get it back from them. But any such work that, it moved you to the point, but unfortunately, you missed it in terms of getting a hold of it. Iram?
How long can my list be? How long can my list be? Is there an end to this? No, I don't want to look at it that way. I think,
Okay.
like I said to you, I think I'm luckier than many people because I live vicariously. I am acquiring, I am experiencing. I don't think acquiring is the end game. I think that experience and that memory is never going to leave me, right? That feeling that I have is never going to leave me. So it really isn't about owning a piece of art. I'm happiest in galleries and museums. I don't need to buy something, but I do need to be in that space. I've been in a Rothko exhibit in New York at MoMA, and I thought I wouldn't leave. Like, I thought they will lock me in at some point because I just couldn't move. And it was my first time seeing such a large collection of Rothkos together. I had never experienced it, and there is almost an unholy kind of, it's hard to describe a Rothko work. There's almost a glow that comes out of it. There is this, it just envelops you, and it's hard to explain it to somebody. For example, sometimes when you're having this conversation with clients or people who are primarily interested in decorative art, and you are trying to explain the journey of an abstract work, it's a difficult conversation. I think I navigated well by now because I've had practice, only because I've had practice. But I think the best thing to do is to let someone experience it. And that is what this is. It's just what, if I go to Jaiveer's home, I'm not going to look at acquiring what he has or think about it even once. Just that experience of sharing that, and possibly sharing that with Jaiveer, is going to make it more meaningful. And so I'm very blessed. I live in this highly, highly enriched space where I do what I love, and I do it all the time.
Yeah, I don't have achieved the level of detachment or calmness that you have. Even in the last conversation with Satyajit, I told him, because we were having a conversation about this, and I said, it's like Jilted Lovers, works which have got away. I remember each one of them, the ones which got away. Yeah, some of them I remember, but I agree with you. I think the older I get, also the pleasure of having
It's
just
the white hair.
something.
It's the white hair. It's the
white hair. The pleasure of having looked at something, the pleasure of the visual pleasure, and the pleasure of dealing with somebody and looking at it in somebody else's home and seeing how they've done it.
Yeah,
I think that's as pleasureful as having something which is your own, right? And there is that much one can have. I mean, beyond one point, it gets problematic. So it's also good to have a sense of being able to let go. I think you're slightly more luckier than I am, because in your case, a lot of letting go means that it goes into places where you're placing it.
And then you can go back.
You can go back.
And have access to those places.
Exactly.
Yes.
So which is why when I think Kiran acquires a work, I'm very happy, because I'm like, eventually we're all going to get
I'll go there and see it.
Yeah. So like that, in that sense, and just a small point that you were talking about, I think it hit me in my own journey. Say around about 7 years ago or 8 years ago, I didn't understand Gaitonde. I just couldn't get it.
Sure.
Right. I do get it now. And I've been lucky enough to acquire a paperwork, which just happened. But like 7-8 years ago, I thought maybe it's all hype. I'm like, I don't get it. And then the more I studied, and the more I saw his work, and the more I listened, and the more I read, and the more I understood, I understood what he meant. And it's absolutely beautiful, that sense of calm, of meditation, it's not abstract. It's, as he said, it's non-objectivist, right? I mean, it's just beautiful, both visually as well as from almost a spiritual level, right? You can see that Zen Buddhism and that calmness inculcate that work. And when I've hung that work, and I've hung it at my mother's home, it just seems to envelop that place in a sense of calm. Right. So I think it's also, all of us are on a journey. So just because we don't understand something today doesn't mean that we won't understand it tomorrow. And I think we should be open to the kind of moving forward in our own aesthetic taste as well.
Forward, backward, I think it's
like whatever. Like,
whatever.
Like, things change. Like, and things evolve, and we evolve. Right.
Evolve.
Like, so it's a very it's an anecdote from a friend whose father visited Lahore. He was born in Lahore, grandfather rather, visited Lahore, and at the age of 85, and he had grown up, they'd gone to college in Lahore. And he was asked, Dadaji, आप तो लाहौर बहुत बदल गया है. इसे जब देखने वाला इतना बदल गया है तो लाहौर तो बदला ही होगा.
Exactly.
So we all grow, we all evolve.
Yeah. I mean, you read Enid Blyton as a child, and today you may be reading Sartre or Derrida or Eco, whatever you read. It's that. Same thing.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this session. Thank you so much for being so vocal about your ideas. Thank you so much for being so candid. It's always a pleasure to have speakers who are candid, because then you actually get to know what goes on, right? Thank you so much for this. We'll open up for a quick Q&A and then we can wrap up the session. Yeah?
Yes, because I'm running late for a Diwali thing. So please.
Harsh, do you want to come in quickly?
I think it was a great session, and more than a session, it looked like like one of those COVID time things when we are all sitting in our own homes with our own glasses of wine. Doesn't matter what city we are in, and it's amazing. Thank you, guys. It has been a great session. I'll allow anyone if they have any questions. Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
I think we spoke so much, there are no questions.
Great.
Yes.
Then let's wrap it up, Satyajit.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for being
Thank
there.
you
And
so
we hope
much.
to engage with you a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.